Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to Barsetshire Week. Today I'm going to be talking about the first book in the series, which is The Warden. Chapter 1, Hiram's Hospital. The Reverend Septimus Harding was, a few years since, a beneficed clergyman residing in the cathedral town of, let us call it Barchester. If you missed yesterday's video, I'll link it down below. But basically this week on my channel I'm doing Barsetshire Week and I'm talking through the Chronicles of Barsetshire by Antony Trollope, talking through each of the books in order of the series and discussing what I like about them, what I don't like about them, what the basic premise is, etc. in order to try and encourage more people to read this incredibly brilliant book series. But The Warden is the first book in the series. It is also therefore the book I read the longest time ago. I read it about 2.5 years ago, so I'm sorry if this video is not as long nor as in-depth as the rest in this series. To start off with the basic premise, The Warden is about a man called Septimus Harding. He is the warden of Hiram's Hospital, which is effectively an almshouse. He is a clergyman, he's fairly old, he has 2 daughters, one of whom is married and one of whom is unmarried, and he has been a clergyman and the warden of this hospital for quite a while. The person who left the money to set up this hospital left sort of provision in the will for a warden to be appointed. And then one day a young man called Mr. Bold challenges the will and says, actually, what if this money wasn't left to pay the warden? What if the warden should be receiving much less of an income and more of the money should go to the pensioners who are in this hospital? And everything is made more complicated by the fact that this man, John Bold, also wants to marry Septimus Harding's daughter, despite the fact that he is challenging Mr. Harding's position. Mr. Harding is a fairly sort of meek, quiet man who is quite happy to have less money and doesn't really want to protest, although he is quite shocked to think that perhaps he has been receiving money unjustly. But his son-in-law, the husband of his eldest daughter, Dr. Grantley, thinks that it is abominable that someone dare question this and is determined that Mr. Harding will hold his ground and hold his position. And everything goes on from there. So first I want to talk about the things that I love about it, and then I will talk about the things that other people don't like about it, and which I think mean it is not my favourite in the series, even though I do really enjoy it. But yes, things I love about this book. The main thing, I think, is its treatment of morality. Mr. Harding is an incredibly moral man. He is incredibly nice, he is incredibly kind, he is one of the most, unequivocally nice people in the entire of this series. So for him to be told that he might have been doing something that is immoral is abhorrent to him. And to not know whether or not he is in an immoral position, and to have his son-in-law telling him that he is not in an immoral position, and his prospective future son-in-law telling him that he is in an immoral position, makes things incredibly difficult for him. And this exploration of morality and of the way other people perceive morality and of the difficulty to know what is right and wrong is really, really interestingly explored in this book. And another thing I really love about this book is the sort of theme and motif of music. Mr. Harding plays the cello and also kind of composes music and is really, really interested in kind of analysing music, and the joy he gets from music, the importance of it in his life, is really, really interestingly explored in this book, and something I really, really love. I also think the way sort of family relationships are explored in this book is brilliant. Mr. Harding's relationship with both of his daughters, who he has quite different relationships with, are really interesting, and also with his son-in-law and his prospective son-in-law, especially in the way that he is sort of afraid of Dr. Grantley, his son-in-law, and feels sort of pressured by Dr. Grantley in many ways. I spoke yesterday about how one big theme in the whole of the series is different opinions between sort of parents and children, often to do with marriage, but actually also in this circumstance is to do with sort of religion and morality. The fact that Mr. Harding finds it very hard to go against his son-in-law's beliefs and his son-in-law's suggestions, partly because his son-in-law is a much stronger character than himself, and the kind of difficulty that that leads him into. Another really interesting theme in this, that is a theme throughout the series, is kind of the duty of morality that a clergyman has, and whether or not a clergyman has more duty to be moral than other people within society. I also think the exploration of kind of media and newspapers is really interesting in this. Mr. Harding is at points sort of slandered by the newspapers, and the role of sort of the press and social opinion in Victorian England is really interestingly explored here. A few of the things I love about this book are also the characters. Mr. Harding is a wonderful person, really, really interesting, and I also love his daughter Eleanor, especially as the series go on. But his other daughter is also very interesting, and so interesting as well in their differences, and his son-in-law, Dr. Grantley, is a brilliant, brilliant character. He's one of those characters actually that is very interesting throughout the series. But reading this book, reading The Warden, I don't like Dr. Grantley. Dr. Grantley frustrates me, but then as the series go on and he crops up in other books, I've grown to like him more, and so if I were to reread The Warden now, which I'm sure I will do in the future, I think I would have a slightly more sympathetic feeling towards Dr. Grantley. Quickly, I do just want to talk about a few of the things that I think slightly hold The Warden back and are one of the reasons why a lot of people are a bit put off by The Warden. One thing I think is that the love story in here is not the most exciting or developed thing, and there are much better love stories in the rest of the Chronicles of Barchester. Another thing is that it is about church politics, and often people can read The Warden and feel it is a bit dry. And I think the role of church politics and the fact that this book is focused on church politics does put a lot of people off because they feel it's not quite relevant to a modern society, which certainly in the country I'm in is not very religious, and where it is religious is not very Anglican anymore. And the sort of divisions between high and low church within a single established church, I don't know if they exist anymore, but they're certainly not things that people are aware of or feel very relevant to everyday life for most people, I think. However, although this book is about church politics, it's also about morality, and there are sort of universal themes in this and things that I do think do stand the test of time and are still relatable and are still interesting, even if you're not interested or don't think you're interested in Victorian church politics, because it is basically about a man who is told that he is in an immoral position and suddenly has to reevaluate the life he's been leading, and also to try and work out where he stands on a moral footing and which of the various people telling him different things are right. And in that way, it is very universal and it is very applicable to more modern situations, and it is fascinating and wonderful. And there's so many things that I love about the entire series, and I do really, really love this book. I do appreciate that it's not for everyone as much as I think the rest of the series is, although I really think, and I will stress again, that you should read the books in order. I would highly recommend starting with The Warden and then immediately reading Barchester Towers, the second book in the series. Then feel free to take a break between the second and the third books, but I do think, especially because they are very closely tied together in terms of the characters, that it's worth finishing The Warden and starting on Barchester Towers right away. I think that's all I have to say about The Warden by Antony Trollope. Though it's not my favourite in the series, I do love it a lot and would highly recommend it, as I would with the whole of the series. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow to talk about Barchester Towers.